And parallel to this, we will also be having discussion on technology adoption in education sector, how online education is shaping the future of learning. And to moderate this session, we have Senior Director and Head of NASSCOM, Gandhinagar Center of Excellence, Mr. Amit Saluja.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure being with all of you. I'll start with a special thanks to the GESIA team for giving me opportunity to be at this great event which is happening, and also giving me opportunity to be with two eminent people, leaders from the education sector, Dr. Sanjay Chaudhary and Dr. Jagmohan. Pleasures being with you. Dr. Sanjay Chaudhary is the Dean of Students and the Dean of School of Engineering and Applied Science, Ahmedabad University. And Dr. Jagmohan Bhanver is the he's the CEO of Next Milestone Technologies Private Limited, and he's also the executive coach, writer. He was the Dean Emeritus IIFM, and he's an ex-banker. So great to be with you. Before we start, I think let me kind of talk about with what our Secretary IT's just kind of hinted us, or other kind of messages he gave us. Right? It's a very kind of positive day today, especially for the Gujarat. Our state has been recognized as the top state in the overall startup ecosystem development, which is great news. And the kind of growth also that we are seeing, especially in the manufacturing sector in Gujarat, which is that's actually tremendous. So lovely start of the day today with so much positive news coming in. And plus again, the great part is whatever we are talking since morning is again full of learnings. And this session in which we'll further take the learning to the next level by talking on the future of the learning, and that's where the whole focus of this session will be. So welcome Dr. Sanjay and welcome Jagmohan ji. So before we start, let me kind of define what I think what is the future of learning, or how do we look at it, right? And when we are talking in the new normal, the future from my perspective, I think will become when human and machines are working together. Right? That's the future which is coming out for everyone. And this is something which will be a unique way for all of us, and which will lead to a lot of changes within us in terms of how do we work. Right? So the workplace will get redefined in every enterprise right now. And I think it has already started happening. Since the COVID has happened, the whole way of work has changed. We have all talking of remote in every aspect of it. Right? So what this will lead to is a lot of unlearning and relearning on how to learn. Right? So that will be the massive change which is going to happen. The learning will need to have a lot of flexibility, adaptability, and empathy. So these are the three things which I kind of feel that this will kind of create the major disruptions in the learning. We are talking about a lot of platforms coming in, and I think we will talk in detail about what are those. But I think the major transformation has started happening. So let me start with Professor Sanjay. What are the innovations are we seeing in the learning? And I think maybe that's the question which we can all of us answer, or we can start with. What do you think the kind of innovations we are seeing in the overall learning environment right now? What challenges are happening, and how these innovations are helping?
So good morning, everybody. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Jagmohan, and GESIA team for inviting us on such a very interesting topic. Professor Jain has given a very interesting background and how academics and university can do wonderful activities for the society. Amit, I will take a little liberty, and I will first start with the challenges, because when lockdown was announced and suddenly we all came in a corner, in a sense, from next day or next week, universities were supposed to be offline, teach students online. And then we decided that, we will take this challenge and we will start. So like any digital savvy, technology savvy university organization, we are using digital technology or ICT technologies extensively on day-to-day operations, campus operations, and many activities, including research collaborations and some aspects of academic pedagogy. And we will touch on that a little later on also. So this situation really imposed various challenges in front of us, and I will go a little deeper in a sense, and because of that, perhaps participants would get good idea about it. Any university is likely to have multiple schools, not only one school which is very technology oriented. We are like university, which is very broad and based on liberal education. Research-led kind of delivery. So we have primarily three schools: School of Art Science, then there is a School for Management, and then there is a School of Engineering and Applied Science. Plus there are few research centers. Now we can understand, faculty members in these schools, they are different, their styles are different, their academic delivery is different, expectations of students are different. Some faculty in some school, they prefer different model of teaching. Faculty in management, they prefer case-based kind of teaching. Faculty in engineering, they prefer different kind of model to deliver. Within engineering also, we are not only ICT, we have, computer science and engineering, plus we have chemical engineering and mechanical engineering. Now, when there are labs, and in engineering, as we know, that the combination of both theory plus hands-on has to be very solid. Now, suddenly students are not able to come to the labs. Now, how to deal with that situation? Now, last semester, very frankly, I will tell you that during winter semester, we could not do much for the labs because labs were closed. We could not do much, and that created a very interesting challenge. This semester also we are online, and as there are challenges, we are thinking a little differently, and I will address those issues when we enter into innovations and new pedagogy models. Another interesting challenge was regarding faculty know-how. We claim that faculty members are competent and they can switch to this kind of teaching, kind of online teaching very easily. I'm sure Jagmohan and you both will agree with me that it is not that easy at all. Faculty members have to be performers. Their style of conducting online sessions and the way things are happening over Moocs and other things, they're utterly different compared to when you teach in the class. In the class, you can apply some traditional models which you cannot apply here. So that was another challenge for us. I already talked about, engineering aspects and science related aspects where students used to go. They go to the labs and, half of the time they are in the lab, and now that part is cut off and we could not do much. And the last challenge which we observed and which we are still not able to address very effectively is that our students, they are scattered all over India, not only urban areas, but they are in rural areas. And believe me, some of the students, they live in so much of interior rural areas of India where internet connectivity is a dream. And we keep on teaching online, and we assume that students are available for 6 to 8 hours online. I think that really opened up our eyes. So these were in nutshell, the challenges which we observed. And in the next round, when we talk about, how we addressed and what are the innovation, maybe I will go further into that.
Sure. Professor Jagmohan.
Thanks, Amit. Before I start, I'd just like to thank GESIA, the organizers, yourself and Sanjay for being here and for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Sanjay has already nailed it quite on the head. So a lot of stuff that he's spoken about. So I'm not going to repeat that, but I'd like to maybe capture a few other aspects on the challenges part. Let's start with GERs, gross enrollment ratios. If you look at it, while there's been a lot of progress in increasing the gross enrollment ratios in India, our last analyzed gross enrollment ratio in India was about, I think about 26%, right? Compare this to some of the other markets. In the US, it would be about 88, 90%. In Germany, it's about 70%. In UK, it is about 60, Canada 69. So there is a distance to go. And when you look at the number of potential learners in our country, that gross enrollment ratio speaks volumes. So that's the first challenge. How do you increase the gross enrollment ratio? Now, obviously, there is a limitation to how many more classrooms you can set up. There's a limitation to how many universities or campuses you can set up. And I'm not going to get into solutions right now because I'm expecting that somewhere down the line you will ask us for innovations that support it.
Yeah.
But GER is one of the big issues. The second is the quantum of trained faculties. Now, quantum of trained faculties, even in the traditional segment, needs to be augmented, and we've all been talking about it. But in the new paradigm, where online learning is going to take away a significant chunk of traditional learning, as Sanjay mentioned a while ago, it requires a sea change. You cannot just juxtapose a traditional faculty and place them in a virtual classroom and expect that everything is going to happen the same way or better. So mindset change for the faculties, that's going to be a challenge. Surmountable challenge, but it is a challenge. The other thing is the pedagogy. How do you adapt to the virtual paradigm as a faculty, as an instructor? That will need to undergo a change. And then, of course, there is technology, the comfort with using technology, especially if you've not been using it too much in the past. And then there are issues like bandwidth. So we're not just talking about metro cities. If you want to democratize this, take it to smaller towns, smaller cities, is the technology architecture going to be able to support this? That becomes the other challenge. What else? I think one of the other large potential challenges is when you think of India's demographic dividend. Now, most of us understand demographic dividend, but for those who may not be as clear, in very simple words, it's the number of, or the percentage of working population in the overall number of people who are out there. India has a great potential dividend, which means we have a lot of people who are in the working population age. And compared to all other markets, including China, we are very well placed. But then this is half of the story. If you look at the other half, you're looking at a situation where our employability level in the nation is particularly low. And I'm not talking about employment. I'm talking about employability. So our overall employability, even in the last statistic, though it's gone up, is at approximately about 50%, which means 50% of our workforce is still unemployable. That means they do not have the skills and the knowledge that the industry requires. If you look at engineering, and Sanjay can probably bear me out on that, close to 90% of the engineers across various reports have been stated to be unemployable. Now, that is another challenge. And I think virtual, along with a lot of other changes, might be able to address the challenge, but we'll keep that for later. So I think these are two challenges that I would certainly want to talk about: GER, demographic dividend. The third is the pattern in which learning has happened historically in our country. I think there are some fantastic things about how education happens in India. But like most of the things, there are also things which have a flip side. So for instance, the world today is moving more towards personalization. Whereas where we are still probably hovering around is more of a one-size-fits-all approach. So I think that's the other challenge that we will need to address. How do we personalize learning? Now, you could use technology to do it, you could use 20 other things, but that is indeed a challenge, right? And the fourth, of course, is the degree of learner engagement. So if your learners are not engaged, they're not going to complete courses. Dropout rates are going to be higher, whether it's in the traditional courses or it's in Moocs, and that's what's happening. If the learners are not engaged, they will not learn sufficiently, which means tomorrow their contribution in the enterprise sector is also going to be low. So these are some of the challenges. I think I'd like to kind of take a pause here and maybe talk more as we go forward.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So thanks for bringing up this. This is very pertinent points. And I think you talked about very kind of critical aspects of like the personalization, technology, the solutions that we need. But before we get into it, I think the biggest point I think for me, which you highlighted, was on the employability. Right? So the employability right now is, kind of talked about, it's less than 50%. And there is another aspect of it is that the future jobs are changing. While our current workforce is kind of not fully enabled with for the current jobs, but even the job roles are changing, which means, if we kind of don't act now, then in that case, this problem of 50% will even become more, right? So with the rate of change of the jobs. So then the skills becomes the more important. And I think we should be talking also about the skills of the future. While we really are talking about future of learning, but to kind of, and why do we need it is because we need to impart the skills of the future.
They're so interconnected, Amit. They're so
very connected. So let's talk about what are the skills that we need, so that we are able to provide to our people, our workforce, better skills, so that their employability increase, and then we are able to better perform in the future. So what kind of skills will be needed in the future, which everyone should look forward to?
So, look, it requires a mindset change, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the paradigm in which we were brought up, and I'm talking about our generation, right? So people in their late 40s, early 50s, we were not conditioned to learn how to learn. At least I was conditioned to memorize. I was conditioned to believe that academic grades are great, and as long as you have brilliant academic grades, your future is set. But I think what needs to change, one of the things that needs to change is we need to, as a country, and it's not just faculties, as parents as well, we need to evolve the mindset, which is, look, help students or help learners learn to learn, right? Which means less of memorization, more of problem-solving orientation, okay? So I have learned these skills, but how do I use these skills to solve real-life problems out there? That is going to be a very critical skill for the future. Social skills. My organization has been working with students and with corporate learners over the last 20 years. And one of the challenges we face when organizations say that person A or B is not employable is not because they don't have the necessary technical knowledge. It's the lack of social ability, interpersonal skills, social skills. I think that's something which is going to be a very powerful fuel for the future. Creativity, right? The willingness to question the paradigm and say, okay, how could this be different? Because when you do that, disruption happens, right? So there's a lot of stuff, but I think Sanjay would be the ideal person to respond to this question.
Yes, I agree with you, Jagmohan, completely. And you straight away pointed out very clearly. And in academics, from academics point of view, I should say we should confess it. Our pedagogical models are poor. We don't encourage. When I say we, means in general across the globe or our country. We don't encourage learning part and not learning, self-learning also. And if these students, they have to survive in industry at least for next 40 to 50 years, because your career is at least for 40 to 50 years. Plus you get significant turns in your career also. So you should be ready to adapt, the new challenges. Nobody thought about this pandemic, before a few years, maybe last December when we all were celebrating. And look at the kind of challenge it has posed. Coming back to university point of view, I think we have to think and we have to work extensively, very creatively on pedagogy. So what we are doing in that particular sense is, we believe that, we need to adapt different pedagogy. One of them is a project-based learning. Now, when you say project-based learning, most faculty, they think that, doing a small project in a course is a project-based learning. That is not the case. It's a different philosophy, different pedagogical model. You think course as a project. So when you talk to industry people, they talk about big project. Construction of a dam is a project, and think about the complexity involved in that kind of problem. So when you think a course as a project, as a faculty, your delivery model changes straight away. Here I can give you a very simple example so that things become a little simple. You cannot tell young students to construct a dam or think about what could be the design to construct a dam. But let's say we are teaching them an engineering course on electronics. So instead of teaching electronics in a flat manner, can we start with a project like, some insect which can fly, take that as a project. And as a part of this 4 or 6 months course, at the end of semester, you have to ensure that that insect is going to fly. So think about materials, think about electronic components, think about material science, think about physics, think about mathematics, and get those components, construct them, and you have faculty. Faculty will be teaching concepts not in a flat manner. Faculty will be teaching only required aspects. So as a student, you go and ask faculty that I want to do this, what can I do, how can I do? So the whole teaching paradigm changes drastically. Now here, of course, faculty's role is to facilitate everything, but faculty has to be more knowledgeable. Previously, I used to go and deliver the way I wanted. Now the youngsters are going to challenge me that your theory, the way you have told me, is not working here. So as Jagmohan, you said that why they are unemployed? Because, they have learned in a very flat manner. They have only, most probably they did nothing else but mugging up those concepts and, they cleared exams with grades. Here, of course, what you are doing is, you are telling them very clearly. Now, another thing is, when they do this kind of projects, when I say project-based learning, there is no point in teaching 7-8 courses in a semester. Why not to teach best 4 courses in a semester? And not only teaching these courses, but please ensure that, we do projects across the courses. Instead of, dumping 10 projects in a semester, give them only 2-3 projects. Another example, which I can think from my domain point of view, and equally somebody from mechanical engineering can think differently, is that, say, when you are teaching linear algebra, signal and system, and computer organization, if you make them independent, isolated, completely isolated, students are not going to make out of it. But if 3 faculty members can come together and define a project which is based on linear algebra, computer organization, plus signal and systems, and then do a project, I think students are going to enjoy heavily. And coming back to your issue, that can they be employed? Can their skills improve? Can they be more competent? According to me, the answer is yes. And slowly and gradually, we are able to realize that kind of pedagogy is giving us, very good results. Just before I conclude, it is not that we are the innovative players in this domain. We have learned all these concepts by our interactions with the best engineering colleges of the world. And one of them is Olin College of Engineering, which is the pioneer in USA, Massachusetts area. And it comes in undergraduate top 3 colleges. We all think that MIT is great. But believe me, people from MIT, faculty from MIT, they have left and they have joined Olin College of Engineering, because that is considered as in top 3 undergraduate engineering colleges. Another model is a Harvey Mudd College of Engineering. Their pedagogy is different. So both, Amit and Jagmohan, my argument is that we have to think drastically, we have to be creative, we have to spend a lot of time on pedagogy, we have to empower our faculty, and as a university, it should be our commitment.
Yeah.
Plus, for project-based learning, commitment must come from the top. It cannot be from individual, because it is very resource intensive. One course, instead of being taught by one faculty, you might have 3 faculty. As I told you that, flying insect will require even faculty from physics to come into the class at times. So we have to change everything. Universities, I think, if you ask me very frankly, I have spent almost my whole life in university. I think we guys have to change so much, looking at the requirement, the way they are coming in front of us. So these are my arguments, and maybe we will extend a little bit later.
Great, thanks. So I think, so while you talked about pedagogy and also the project-based learnings, I think one of the other important elements that comes up is the industry-academia engagement. I think Dr. Jain also talked in detail about how critical it is to have a deeper engagement between the industry and academia. And especially industry right now looking at redefining the workforce. We talked about skills, giving employees all the best of the skills, and plus many of the research engagements will require a lot of close collaboration between the faculty, and plus the industry leaders, correct? So what are the kind of things you are seeing in the industry academia engagement? Is something it's kind of happening the way it should happen? We can do something more beyond it. What could be the way to make it real success?
I think that's a very powerful question, Ahmed. That's a very powerful question. And so let me start by saying, if you're building a car, you don't build a car out of your head. You get your team to spend a lot of time with people who are going to be using the car, right? If you're building a toy for kids, you're going to engage with kids and figure out what is it that they are looking for in that toy. What we are building in education institutions today is not too different. It is a product which is going to be consumed by the industry. And if it is going to be consumed by the industry, it's only fair and logical that, as education institutions, we need to be able to immerse ourselves and our students more in the world of the industry. And not just that, get the industry to come to us and engage with us. So, it's like they say, you need to not just bring the working world.
How do you make that happen? Industry to come to academia?
There are ways. 10, 15 years ago, I observed that, institutions would have an industry coordinator whose job it would be to try and get as many speakers as you could to the institute and, get them to talk. It was a great idea. But today, you don't need that. Today, you have technology at your hand. You can actually have 200 industry professionals coming and engaging with your students, whether it's a K-12 or a college, a professional college or otherwise, right? So the tech enablement is there to do it. But the more important question is, why should an industry person actually take out time to engage with the students? So I think that is where we need to be able to articulate a powerful narrative for the industry in terms of how this could actually help them, right? Because these are products that they're going to consume tomorrow. Secondly, merely a speaker coming in from an industry does not benefit either the institution or the student. You need continuous engagement with the industry to benefit all the stakeholders. So to take Sanjay's point ahead, now one of the things that we are doing in our EdTech business, for instance, is if we are running a course on, let us say, data science, we may have the best faculties to run the program. But at the end of the day, if we can have mentors from the industry coming in and talking to our students and showing them how this knowledge of data science can actually help them in their career, not just for the course, but in the career, that becomes a very powerful narrative. And why is it important for the industry partner? Because they could actually use this as a potential talent pipeline that they could look at hiring, either as an intern or as an eventual resource. So it has to be a win-win. The industry needs to be able to recognize that they're getting great talent coming in, and this industry academy and nexus is giving them an open doorway to that talent without going through the entire talent acquisition process. And for institutes and learners, there has to be a continuous value evolving from there. It cannot just be one particular instance where that happens. So I think these are a couple of things which are worthy of consideration. And of course, as I said, there is enough technology to enable this and make it more compelling. But I'm guessing Sanjay would have more points out there.
No, yeah. Jagmohan, you said very, very clearly. So I will add a few points from our experience point of view. Of course, most universities, what they're doing is, they make internships mandatory. So they bring in internships mandatory as a part of curriculum. But then you have to ensure that, that internship becomes very live, dynamic. Not only throw your students to the industry, how much involvement of your own faculty members is also involved. Look at the way Professor Jain said, he's going to establish research park and he's going to bring in, innovative industry. That could be one option. Not only, it is not that is the only option, because space will be limited. But when your students are going to industry, are your faculty members also involved with them? And I will give you an example here. What we have done. We have a course on process simulation, which is a chemical engineering course. What we have done is our 2 faculty members, they are teaching it. There is a faculty from BITS campus, Dubai, Gulf, is also a co-teacher. And there is another faculty from one local college here is also helping as a teaching assistant. Now, what our faculty members did, Dharamshi and Sridhar, what they did, these young faculty, they were talking to chemical engineering industry for a while. And they collected problems from them. And before establishing relationship, we invited them. They came. Now they are delivering talks even within the course. And as you said, Jagmohan, this digital technology has made life very easy. You can work in your office for a half an hour, you go and talk to students and come back to your office. So you don't have to spend one day just to commute and deliver the talk. So technology is enabling it. So we collected those problems, industry problems of big industries, because chemical engineering is more applicable to big plants and so on. So they collected those problems, and now they are giving these problems to the students. And of course, they cannot work with the plants or real machines, but they can use simulation and modeling. Use simulation and modeling very, very extensively. Plus, use some kind of remote connectivity, and they use some sophisticated software like Aspen and so on, which are widely used in chemical engineering and so on. So my suggestion is, look at your own domain, identify these kind of courses, build your relationship. And as you know, building relationship is very, very tough. It is not that industry will support you overnight, or it is not that if industry comes at the last moment, then university will also be ready. I think it requires a significant planning. And according to me, people at the top, vice chancellor, deans, and program chairs, they have to think about program structure, and then they have to see that all those things, they go down, and that vision between top down or bottom up kind of vision both should gel, and we have to try continuously. And I still agree that it is not that we are able to win, we are able to build that very strong relationship with industry. We are a young university, we are still evolving. We have learned some lessons. And what we have done is, we have strengthened our career development center rather. And one interesting thing I will tell you, Jagmohan and Amit both, that in career development cell we have said these are the people who come from industry background. They are not necessarily from academic background. They have worked in industry for a long time. Not only they have worked in industry, but once a while they will conduct few capsule, 10-minute kind of a topic. It's not an academic course; it's a capsule course. And when they talk to the students, they also realize that, where students lack, and instead of asking them to simply fill in the form, it is better that you have some kind of, interface and so on. So make your career development cell very dynamic from beginning, and try to bring in more industry kind of, relationship. And when industry people come, career development cell invites faculty from different disciplines so that they interact with them and then they discuss. On a couple of occasions, I have discuss with the people coming from very leading organizations like Reliance and so on. And when they discuss with us, we realize that what kind of challenges they're facing in their day-to-day life. It could be data science or some problem in chemical engineering and so on. So these are the inputs which we keep on getting, and we have to build around that particular part. But we need ecosystem, very sound ecosystem we need.
Absolutely. And I think Professor Jan, again, since it is stressed about, I can also say that because he talked about the research park within IIT Gandhinagar, and we are actually part of the research park, and we can see the benefits that we have seen over the last kind of a year and a half, working very closely with the IIT. The kind of day-to-day interactions we have with the faculty members of the IIT is always brings in a lot of kind of new learnings and the new ideas. What can be taken to the industry and maybe to the startups. So there is a lot of learning that kind of happens from there, which is actually.
Amit, I have a small additional point here, if I may.
Yeah.
There are three kinds of opportunities available to the industry today. One, at the lower end of the spectrum, is a student coming out of a college, university, could be any college, with no additional credentials apart from what they've learned in college. But remember, industry is not hiring you for your learning. Industry is hiring you for the skill that you bring to the table for them. And not any generic skill, but the skill they believe is going to add value to them. Okay. So this is at one end of the spectrum. A guy walks out of college with a degree, and that's the option. Option two is now, and Dr. Sudhir was talking about, Dr. Jain was talking about Moocs, for instance. Now, Moocs took this to another level. Moocs said, okay, let's democratize learning. So you could be anywhere, anytime, any device, and you could go through our courses. That was a brilliant idea. Having said that, if you look at the adoption of Moocs and completion rates of Moocs, most courses vary at about 20% completion, right? Coursera might be slightly higher, but most of the other Moocs are low. Lack of engagement, right? A lack of motivation to complete the course. And why is the lack of motivation there? Because you don't see anything changing in your career graph after having earned that credential, right? As an industry man, between the option of hiring a student right from college or somebody from college, but with credentials from a MOOC, I'll hire the latter if those credentials make sense to me. But there is a third option. The third option is where a student in a college has done his or her degree in whatever subject, but has picked up maybe one or two areas which they realize are hugely in demand as future skills, right? Let's say data analytics, just to take an example. And they have gone through an actual course on data analytics, not a MOOC course, but an actual course. There are 6 or 7 projects as part of this, which are being done in partnership with various industry partners. So those guys are also adding their contributions there. They might also be reviewing those projects. And at the end of the project, there is, or rather at the end of the course, there is a capstone project, which is built with deep engagement with some industry partner. So you're not just doing it, you're presenting it also to the industry partner. The industry partner gets to see what you've done, your capability, and the actual application of your learning. Between the 3 people that I spoke about, the industry is going to pick up this resource. And this is where the ecosystem comes in. You need to be able to get those deep engagements with industry partners. You need to have that system in place where, students can actually do this. Academicians are supporting it. And somebody needs to be able to mentor the students that, look, these are the 8 or 10 skills which are going to be really critical going forward. So I think that's the additional piece over there.
Sure. So I think, Dr. Jagmohan, since you are talking about building an ecosystem, and for ecosystem, I think the biggest enabler of that becomes right now at least is the online platforms. Right? So, or rather the whole platforms. We were always kind of talking about the learning management system, content management systems, correct? Those are have always been there. But the learning itself is transforming, right? It used to be a guided learning to and now becoming an autonomous learning. Right? So that's the kind of shift which is happening with the way the people is going to learn. Instead of time bound, it is becoming like a self-paced learning. And again, Dr. Chan gave us an example of a student not attending the classes, but listening to the videos and then learning in the evening, and then he was the topper in the semester exam. So the learning process is transforming. And then I think the platforms will become big enabler to make that happen in a best way for students, whether it is for employees or whether it is for anyone, right? So, and you have now a great expertise on the platform. So can we talk about the platform, on what is the changes you are seeing in the platform, and then how industry can adopt those platforms?
Sure. Just a rider here. I don't think I have great expertise in that. I don't think anybody around the world has great expertise in it today, because it's such a dynamic and evolving area, but I'll try and do my best to address that question. The LMS came up around the world almost 40 years ago. The first version of the learning management system came 40 years ago. It was built to partially automate the training process in organizations and in education enterprises. Over the last 4 years, the traditional LMS has taken a nosedive. 2 major reasons. Engagement levels on a traditional LMS are exceedingly low. It does not support personalized learning. There is no gamification. Fourth, you're not using disruptive technology, not for the sake of the technology, but to augment learning, right? So these are some of the challenges that have been faced. Traditional LMSs have been very admin-focused, administrator-focused, not learner-focused. Learning preferences have changed, Amit. Over the last few years, learner preferences have changed. Learners want to be in control of the learning process, which means if I go into a system, it's like what happens on Amazon. You go and pick up a book on mythology, within 2 hours, you will have 20 books being recommended. They have analyzed your user preferences. Today, a learner expects that he shouldn't be needing to go out there to curate content for himself or herself. Technology should be able to do it for them. So recommendation engines within learning systems have become very important. We've seen this happening with players like Degree and Edcast around the world. In fact, our own company has been amongst the first in this part of the world to do that, which means you're giving the learner the control to figure out what content he or she should consume, right? But even today, there is a lot that can be done. Look, if you ask a fish to climb a tree, two things will happen. The fish is not going to be able to do it, and you're going to end up calling the fish stupid. But the fish isn't stupid. It's just not meant to climb a tree, right? If you treat a bunch of 20 people the same way, and you have a one-size-fits-all approach from a learning perspective, some of these guys are going to be termed as stupid. So that's come up, or rather that's compelled organizations to evolve what is called personalized learning, which means Amit has a need for a different learning path. Sanjay should have a different learning path. Jagmohan should have a separate learning path. How do you do this at scale, Amit? Let's say there are 1 million users. So technology, which should be able to automatically build personalized learning paths for people, that's going to be critical. The other thing is, today, more than $200 billion, US billion dollars, is spent every year on corporate learning. 50% of that happens virtually. If $100 billion is being spent virtually, and only 20% of the organizations are saying they're satisfied with the results, what they're really saying is, we don't see measurable ROI coming out of this entire initiative. So something is going wrong somewhere, right? So learning in the future will need to do 3 or 4 things according to me. 1, it needs to be learner-centric. 2, it needs to provide great learning engagement tools. 3, it should be allowing collaborative learning, which means Amit should be able to learn from Jagmohan, Jagmohan should be able to pick up something from Sanjay, and so on and so forth. Social learning, the ability to push content towards you, which is the appropriate content for you, or something that you are aligned towards, right? And something which offers measurable ROI to all the stakeholders, learners for the money they're spending and the time they're spending, organizations, for again the investments they're making in the learning programs. All of that needs to come in to really take this forward. I think the age of the learner experience is going to replace the age of a standalone learning system, and that's already started happening.
That's great. I think that's great insights.
Can I add a few points, Amit?
Yeah.
Jagmohan did brilliantly, but just if I think from university point of view, personalized learning, he said very correctly, and collaborative. That is the requirement, because when students go to industry, they have to work in a team. So they should also learn in a collaborative manner. So what is happening now in technology front is that some tools are emerging, and I think these tools will become mature. But for example, what some of us are doing, let's say at Ahmedabad University, we empower faculty with digital whiteboard, which can be connected to your laptop. And some they learn quickly, some they struggle, but now they're doing it. So, give them digital whiteboard, which has flexibility, the way you write, the way you talk, it can be done with complete flexibility. Then there are, I will not talk about commercial platforms. There are very brilliant commercial platforms, but there is a free. It has commercial also, Miro, M-I-R-O kind of tool, which is very collaborative. And some of our faculty members are using very, very extensively. And third is, virtual labs. In such a big country, I personally believe that, we need to scale it up, Amit. People like you from NASSCOM and big organizations can help us to do that. We need virtual labs so that the students, as Jagmohan said, very contextual, very personalized, very collaborative learning can happen. And then only these students will become, really talented, and they will be able to get, good opportunities in a complex industry scenario.
Sure. So I think while we are talking about the platform, and I think Dr. Jagmohan, you talked about how it becomes important for the platform to drive the engagement for the learner. Right? So let's talk about the learner experience now, right? Because that's the most important part of it, the adoption point of view. Unless the experience is there, learner will not adopt it, and it happens at everywhere, whether it is a university or whether it is a corporate life. So what do we do so that the learner experience improves, right? I mean, I know the online platform are doing a great job of somewhere doing collaboratively, like
sure. That's a great question.
Talked about the tools also, Miro, correct? I mean, but what else? I mean, what we can do to make it whole as a great experience for the learners, so that learning doesn't come by force, but more of an enjoyment. Like right now, everyone is sitting at home trying to do certain things, and the time they can spend in the learning will be the most helpful. So
that's a great question, Amit. Just one point before I address that question. I think I missed out on how learning platforms can actually benefit academic institutions. We spoke about gross enrollment ratios at the beginning of this discussion.
Yeah.
Today, if a university or a college has 1,000 students, a digital campus or a smart campus through a good virtual platform can actually enable them to take that 1,000 students to 100,000 students. And if you look at the NEP 2020 and the UGC recommendations, I think 2018, it's heavily focused towards learning platforms which are able to drive that, along with learner engagement. So I thought I'll just mention that. Now to your question. Why will anybody want to learn? Forget a learner, anybody. It has to be enjoyable to start with, right? So the first thing is the design of the content that you put up digitally has to be structured in such a way that it is enjoyable. So gone are the days where you put up 2-hour-long content. So nano learning is becoming important. Micro learning. You should be able to have content in bite-sized pieces so that people can actually go through them quickly, take some learnings, and that's it. So that's number one. 2, as a learner, if your platform can help me understand where I'm strong and where I'm facing difficulty, and then is able to recommend to me how I can address that difficulty, I think that becomes a very powerful pull factor. Amit, you spoke about pull versus push. If I can understand where my difficulties are and get a solution to that problem, that's the second part. The third part is competition and collaboration. So a platform which can use gamification to foster competitive spirit, which means how I am doing versus Amit or versus Sanjay. And on the leaderboard, I'm actually showing on the top. That can be a very powerful motivator. The other is collaboration. Most people learn faster and learning sticks more when it's happening collaboratively. So a platform which through gamification technologies can foster both competitive and collaborative is also going to enrich the learner experience. The other is automation. And automation, by automation, I mean, look, today, if you look at academic institutions, and I've run one for about a decade, Sanjay will bear me out, hopefully, on this. If I remember, at least 60% of my faculty's time was spent on administrative work, which honestly is not their core competence. Their core competence is their domain expertise. And where they can add value to students is using that core expertise, but more importantly, spending time with those students, to facilitate their learning process. Automation can actually help you do that by taking away some of the repetitive processes away and enabling faculties to spend more time with students on this. So a platform which allows you to do that and allows the student to engage with faculties, or in corporate sector to allow learners to engage with trainers, that will also augment the learner experience. So these are some of the things. There's a lot more, but I mean, I would say these are some of the ones that I would want to talk about probably at this stage. Sanjay might want to add a few.
Yeah, no, you have covered most of the points, Jagmohan, very nicely as usual. And my only addition would be that, we need personalized kind of learning. what I see in our university, and I'm sure other universities might be observing, is that personalized learning is missing actually, even with this existing platform, and students don't find it very interesting because everybody has his or her own pace and style and everything. So that is to be done. Still, digital technologies is evolving, and I'm sure even after post-COVID, the way digital technology and the way impact is improving, and the way you give global context, I think there is a big hope. There is a big kind of demand likely to come out of this particular thing. And if you can recall, some of the companies have already said that, big companies, I will not name them, but they will not hire students coming only from universities. If somebody is able to get some required certification, that means students, they have knowledge, knowledge in certain areas. Companies are ready to, recruit them. So that looks like a future. But my only suggestion would be that, when you talk to industry people, if they can please make those tools very personalized, and very context oriented. For example, let's say students are learning data structure. So instead of starting in a flat manner, if you can go back to the context of each student and what each student was facing in and out, if you can restore that context, and here I'm sure, as you know, you need artificial intelligence and, augmented reality and those kind of things. I think future tools would require all those kind of capability. And I'm sure the way everything is growing, I think these tools will become reality in near future. Yeah.
Great. So I think let's kind of, Professor Sanjay, you talked about the artificial intelligence. So let's kind of dig deep into that. And just a time check, I think we will have just maybe 5-7 minutes more. So let's kind of cover this important point on how are we seeing the role of AI, machine learning in kind of transforming the whole learning system. I think one example I can talk from my side is, coming up as we used to call it as a cognitive tutor, right? So AI assisting learner in terms of assessing what the level of the learner is, what the learning needs are, and then as the course kind of progress, there is the kind of level will keep increasing based on the system, how the system will analyze the learner is absorbing or what are the things that the learner would want to do for, right? So I think AI can do a lot in terms of becoming a virtual tutor sitting right in front of you. So that's the kind of one example that then I can say. But from your experience, in whatever in the last few years, seeing this new technology coming into the learning, so I think it would be great to kind of get your thoughts from both of you on how AI and machine learning is now getting used in the learning, and which is making it again more interactive, more collaborative, more experiential.
Sanjay, would you want to address this first? Or?
I will start and then I will hand over to you. So what I believe is that, the last word which you said, Amit, is very, very important. Experiential learning, right? Unless students they are really involved in whichever education, engineering, arts, management, medicine. Well, medicine is the classical example of experiential learning, and subsequently engineering also. So if you improve your experiential learning effectively, and believe me, Amit, your faculty has to do a lot of extensive work. Experiential learning is not easy. What pedagogy, how will you do it? It requires a tremendous planning starting from top. And there AI will be very, very useful. When I say AI, I assume that, machine learning, which does more of statistical kind of computing. So what is happening is, today, fortunately, the way software industry, the way technology is growing, I think the limitations regarding computations, data size, on the fly kind of, recommendations which are required, they can be done very easily. And looking at the way industry is growing, I believe that, they will exploit the power of all these features, and very slowly and gradually, instead of ordinary, as you said initially, instead of very flat LMS, slowly and gradually we will have, learner-centric kind of, systems, which will be highly personalized, and, it will help a student to grow based on his or her, capability and, ability. Plus, it will also, enable the individuals to self-learn. When I say self-learn, because you don't have to clear the course. You have to go and work in the industry or real world to solve the problems. So you should not forget those concepts. But even if you're not able to recall concepts, how easily you can go back to this kind of AI-based tools and refresh your knowledge so that you go and work in industry, real world problems and solve those problems. So that is a potential I see there.
So
Yeah, Jagmohan. Yeah.
I think that was a fantastic observation from Sanjay. My 2 penny on this is, look, it's the proactive approach versus the post-mortem approach, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 or 4 applications, and I think that should explain my perspective on this. Assume that a course is running. Now, in most cases, after the course is over, we do a post-mortem, we figure out where it went well, what didn't happen well, and then we try and replicate that or use those best practices. Some of these technologies can actually help you course correct in real time. So AI would help you make decision making, would help your decision making process. So what is going wrong here? Is it content related? Is it instructor related? Is it a student profile related? Is it a mismatch of content versus audience and many other things? So AI-led decision making becomes a very powerful tool. The second piece is, how do you use machine learning capabilities of the system? So one use case could be, I have 50 faculty. My machine learning algorithm would actually recommend to me that for this particular course, for these kind of student profile, which is the ideal faculty fit, and automatically the instructor recommendation happens. By the way, we're already doing this in our LMS LXP solution. The third use case could be, as I said, a student has consumed content on impactful communication, has given it a rating of 5, has also consumed content around presentation skills, and the machine learning algorithm now is able to pull content, not just from within the system, but from outside as well, and push that content to that. That's the ML use case algorithm there. And then, of course, there are live analytics, which are nothing but intelligent algorithms, which will help make the course much more effective. So there are multiple use cases. Another use case could be, if a person with this profile has joined in, this should be the right course which should be recommended to this person, right? Another could be where you have an assessment-based recommendation happening. So there is an assessment happening. Based on this assessment, if this is how you did, then these are the learning paths that you should be picking up. The scope is humongous. We spent almost 3 years building this tech, Amit, and while we have all of what I just spoke about, when I look at it, I think it will take us years to take it to a level where we can completely automate, most of the essential pieces. But that's where life is headed. And I don't think it is because of COVID. I think the change had started happening years ago. In fact, if you look at online learning in the last 5-6 years, online learning in India has gone up by 800%, by the way. Okay. In the next 3 years or 2.5 years, it is going to triple. So I think it was already happening. COVID has just made us more aware of the change, right? But the change was there. And now the acceptance and adaptability will probably be higher. That's it. That's the way I look at it.
Great. Okay, so I think we just have maybe 2-3 more minutes, and I will just pose my last question and to both of you, and I think if appreciate if we can just get a 1-minute response. And you already touched upon it, Jagmohan. I wanted to talk about the online learning, the stats around online. So the overall education market in India is about $100 billion. And as per what I learned is for the last year in India, it was for online learning, it was $2 billion, right? So 2 billion out of the overall $100 billion. While we are when you talked about growing at a phenomenal rate, and then COVID has really made that growth to an exponential. Where do you see the future of now the online platform, online learning going, and is that kind of, and then what else the corporates can do to kind of, and to make sure that it's used to the best of the potential, right? So I think question to both of you, very quick answer.
KPMG report says the total education market is $245 billion. The total edtech market next year will be $1.96 billion, so close to $2 billion.
Yeah.
The one-line answer to this is forward-thinking edtech companies are going to not just focus on the traditional edtech market. They will try and use a blue ocean strategy to try and see if they can pick out a large stake from the traditional education market. I think it's primed to go up significantly high over the next few years.
Great, thank you. Dr. Sanjay?
As university, we have decided that we will continue even post-COVID scenario. It has helped us a lot because in university you always have students at a different levels. So we don't look at only at those top-notch students. We have to always look at average and below average learners. So these tools and the technology which is available is doing job quite nicely, which is already improving our academic delivery part. I said delivery part. And because it is able to improve our delivery part with all this personalized learning and the way we narrated in terms of power of ML, AI kind of the way potential is likely to realize, I think most universities will continue to use this digital technology for their students and for their audience.
Great, thank you. I think we need to close now. I mean, never felt like this. Almost 1 hour we have been talking, and I think there was still a lot more to talk. Maybe I think we'll catch over some other time. But thank you. It was a great learning for me. I mean, talking to both of you. It was great insights. So thank you, for joining me. And
Amit, you did a brilliant job. The way you connected all these points, you did a brilliant job based on your profile and your background knowledge. You did it brilliant. Let me acknowledge you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amit. I think you just brought it all together, and the facilitation was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Sanjay, thank you so much for your insights. It was great learning for me. And thank you, GESIA, again for inviting us over. Lovely event, and wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, GESIA team. It was a lovely event. I think everyone is learning a lot today. So, and best wishes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Time for question and answer. So I think I'll leave it to you.